as we're awakening individually and collectively, we're really realizing that we're very much in an energetic experience, and that the energy and the energetics play such a huge and profound part in our movie, like the movie of choice, and how much whatever's going on in this movie, like when I help clients with their past life regressions, which I feel is past, present, future when I'm really honest about that, because it's all now. But when we're tuning in to what they've been through, like in your childhood, what you went through and what I went through, how much that plays a part in our now, like whether we're 20, 30, 60. And if we haven't cleared those energetics, or what I call cellular memories, they'll keep playing out like an old record, and it'll keep coming around. And like you're saying, you know, the body's always talking to us. And I love often referring to our bodies like a child. And I loved how in your book you said that. It was so much that you say that's like what I say. It's so beautiful. But it's just like, you know, if the child is crying, we can ignore the baby. We can go, you know, shut the door. We could put a bunch of pillows in front of the door. We could leave the house. Like, it's like, that's what I feel like we're taught in society is when the body's crying, we just put some drugs in there. We numb it. We give it some alcohol, maybe a little marijuana. Maybe we go get really busy. We get more attention. We need more, you know, certificates, whatever the more is.
Right.
And really all that is it's like if you had a baby crying, you're just leaving the house and you're getting further and further away. But that baby is going to keep crying. And I feel like what you discovered as a chiropractor, in the beginning, it's a subtle cry. And then it gets louder and it's like screaming. And if we just could tune in now, which my heart, what I love about your book and why I want to promote you so much is because I feel like all of us as healers that are really here helping humans understand that right now is when you want to deal with it. It's going to save you pain. It's going to help the baby stop crying so the baby feels loved and safe again. And that's going to change everything. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. You know, it's so true that the body is so simple and direct, you know, and our society completely is about, if you didn't digest well, take this, or if you don't sleep, take this pill. If you don't, instead of saying, well, maybe, you know, those symptoms, those problems are because your body's trying to share some wisdom with you, something about your life that's upsetting and you're not digesting, if you will.
Yeah.
And we need to listen, not, you know, I use that analogy of if the house is on fire and you're asleep and somebody came banging on the door, you wouldn't tell them to get out. You would say, yes, thank you for telling me there's a fire. And I get out.
Yeah, I'm getting out of here. Exactly.
And the body is trying all the time to give us these messages. And it's important for each person to learn how to listen in a way, because since we're all so unique, it usually comes through one of the type of senses of feeling, taste, touch, smell, voice, words. And there's different combinations of that. So really learning how does your intuition, them discovering that. So it's the tool that it never gets old. I mean, that's you, every time you use it, you get better and better at it, and Absolutely. You learn more and more. And sometimes people say, well, I'm not intuitive. That's like you were saying, they'll say, well, that's you, Tanya. That's you, Tony. I'm not intuitive. I can't do that. Mm-hmm. We're all intuitive. We all have a soul. The soul wants to express. We all have it. We just, maybe you and I have practiced a little more because we were encouraged to, through our childhood experiences, we were encouraged to listen. And
and many people they kind of suppress that. You know, like I was saying before, we live in a society that kind of encourages us to do what we're told instead of what we feel. And I know as a child, I was quite the little warrior. I was a very sweet child, but I really had great discernment and could feel things when they were out of alignment. And that served me in my life. But many times when I was younger, I would ignore that because I wanted to please mother or please teacher or please whoever. And so we kind of are taught to be people pleasers. from humans that have denied their voice, denied their intuition. And then we now, in order to be loved and accepted by them, we start to deny our own. And I feel like that's such an important thing that we wake up to, and that, you know, if we're mothers watching today or fathers, heal yourselves, because it's so important for your children. And it's going to help the children to feel honored by the parents healing and being truthful. But we have such a society that parents are so worried about if they're going to fail their children that they can't be vulnerable or honest about their own pain. And so then, in essence, they're denying their children nurturing and support, which is causing another generational, you know, cycle of this pain and abuse. It's just like, where do we start, you know?
It's so true. And I would say, you know, like, to listen to your children, you know, as there's a wisdom that the child, younger children especially, don't filter out, that they really do see things, like you're saying, there's a truth, and they just straight arrow right into
feel the energy.
And they'll say, you know, and when many times, unfortunately, in our society also, that when children come and say something has happened to them, the parents just can't believe that it could happen. And we need to listen to our children in all ways. They have a wisdom about things, whether something bad has happened or not, and they know. It's so amazing. I see a lot of different families, and the kids are great because they'll come home and tell their parents, I need to go to Dr. Toni, you know, and they'll say, like, I want my own private time with Dr. Toni because I need to talk to her about something.
Yes. I totally relate. I feel like the same thing in my life with children and teenagers, because one thing that you probably do is that you really listen to them and you really tune into them as a soul, rather than that they're little stupid children. Like, I think so many children are used to being around adults that talk down to them and just tell them, what do you know? You're just a child. And how frustrating that is, because children are amazingly intuitive and insightful. They just are in a smaller body, you know?
It's so true. And many times kids will say, I like you because you talk to me like a person.
Yes. I can tell that with you. I can totally feel that.
And they're so right on, you know, and if we're just present with them and listen, it's a really beautiful thing. And again, that they haven't learned to block their intuition. And as you made that point, in our society, unfortunately, especially in our Western culture, you know, fear is used so much to control the general population, and a lack of understanding, and keep people off balance so that they can be controlled and told what to do. And so many people do want somebody to tell them what to do. And,
it's just nothing of them, right? It's like, I don't have to be accountable because they told me.
It's just like, just tell me what to do and I'll do it, you know? And there's such a way of checking out and numbing out. It's so totally, and unfortunately, we have so many ways to numb out in our society, including, drugs and alcohol and pot and things, but overwork, you know, like we were talking about, you know, being a workaholic and being so busy, you don't have time to talk to your kids. You don't have time to notice your kids. You don't have time to notice if you have any pain or not, until finally your body stops you in your tracks and says, that's it. You're going to listen to me now. I'm going to strike you down where you are.
It's kind of sad, but I feel like with so many of the clients that I help, that's how it happens for them. And I just feel like if we just could become more discerning and intuitive and honor our bodies, we won't need the emergency. Like, we don't need to be floored on our backs and we can't walk and move. We're so debilitated from the pain if we start to listen. But just like you're describing, I have so many clients I've helped that, you know, they're so busy and I don't have time for yoga. I don't have time to be still. Tanya, you don't understand. And I'm like, when you feel like you have no time is the exact time that you want to go be still. And it's just that, you know, I feel like so many times, like, I kind of got a reputation of the teacher or the healer that makes people cry. And I'll be like, it's not that I'm making you cry, but I'm giving you permission to feel. And you're not used to that. You're used to being in society spaces where they don't care what you feel. Like, hey, how are you doing? And they're walking away. They didn't wait to hear.
Exactly.
And then you come in a presence of someone who really does want to know, and they're listening, and you get still and present, and then the emotion starts to rise. I feel like that can get overwhelming for people, like when they're first meditating or they're first going to yoga, or if they read your book and they're trying an exercise. But this is why there's healers like us here to help as a guide to support them through that process, because it is scary. Like, I'm sure, Toni, when you were remembering the abuse you went through, that was probably terrifying for you, right?
Well, exactly. You know, it's funny because at the beginning I knew something had happened because I saw how shut off and numb I was. Yeah. I remember some of the first sessions when in Rubenfeld Synergy, one of the ways that we first start a session is perhaps touching the arm or the hip or the leg and saying, what are you experiencing here? And all over my body was like a thin layer of rock. And underneath was nothing, empty, nothing. And I was like, wow, there's nothing in there, you know, and I'm rock, what happened? And then as I actually started to have memories, I would talk about it as if it was somebody else. You know, I was very not feeling it. And my synergist really had to help me, okay, you know, like, listen to what you're saying. What if this was somebody else? What would you feel? I say, well, I would feel bad for them. Well, and it was you, you know, so, and I really had to be taught to feel my feelings. I had numbed so much to myself, and what was more important was what other people were feeling, and really learning. And, you know, there's that quote in my book. I quote one of my teachers of the Donald Epstein of the network spinal analysis. He said we need to learn to listen to our body's whispers so we don't have to endure its screams. And, you know, even when the body's screaming, it's not trying to hurt you. It's trying to get your attention. Yeah. And sometimes, you know, it has to scream so that we'll slow down enough to say, gee, maybe I need some taking care of. Gee, you know, maybe this needs some attention. And it will do that. Like you're saying, it just keeps coming back around again until finally, you know. Sometimes people come in to the office, it's funny, and they'll have something like, let's say, you know, their leg is totally numb and the muscle doesn't work. They can't lift up their leg, you know. They're dragging their leg. And I'll say, well, gee, when did this start? Well, it started about 40 years ago, but, you know, it just used to hurt a little bit. You know? Yeah,
and you're like, whoa, you've really not been listening for a long time.
It's like, okay, so this is not, you know, this is something that needs some attention, and not just a little Band-Aid. You know, this is, now you've been not listening for a really long time. We need to totally revamp your way of taking care of yourself. This is totally now, we have to pay attention. So,
and I love, like, the way, you know, you were describing in your book of just, like, what had you so driven. We were kind of talking before the show about that. And I could relate to that in some levels as well in my life, like, where you feel from very young, like, I remember as I was doing my inner child healing and my work, I could remember, like, being around age 3, 4, where it was like I was suddenly the caregiver, and I was the responsible one. I was the one taking care of my brother. I was the one taking care of wounded mother. And it was just like this numbness that I discovered in myself, that from that age, it was all about, how do I make them happy? How do I be a good girl? I need to be a good girl. And when I really processed that, like, there was some painful emotions that I had to remember, of sitting outside my mother's bathroom door and her saying she's going to kill herself and that it was all my fault. And she had been abusing me, and she felt so terrible that she, you know, hated herself. And I realized, even as a young child, which I say this is partly what I think's kept me sane and still powerful in my life, is that there was this just innate connection I had to angels and to spirit, that no matter what happened with humans around me, I just there was such a confusion in my childhood. I remember just feeling like, where the hell am I? And like, what is this place? Because my soul just, it had such a memory of love and harmony and